Good evening and welcome to you all. The Audit and Accounts Committee. I shall read the committee suite statement as normal. The fire evacuation procedure for this meeting. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the side of this room and exit through reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. This meeting is being webcast live on the internet and will be available to view on YouTube after the meeting. And as usual, mobile phones, please switch your phones either off or to silent. Thank you. So, item 1, I think we have a full house. There are no apologies or absences tonight. Well done. Any declarations of interest? Nope. So, urgent matters. Under urgent matters, I'll just read this statement. It refers to item 10 on the agenda. So, due to the lateness of the report, which was not published 5 clear working days before the meeting, I have agreed to take item 10 for the following reason. The audit of the 2021-22 accounts is still ongoing, and the finance and property teams and the external auditors are working at pace to complete the audit. In order to provide the very latest position on the accounts and the auditor's update, there has been a delay in providing the report to ensure that the latest up-to-date position can be reported. So that's item 10. So, item 4, minutes of the last meeting. Councillor Basham.
Thank you, Chair. Can we get a printed copy of that statement you just made, please? So that we can refer to it in the meeting.
Is everybody... That's very good. Yeah.
I need it for now, for the meeting, not for later. Sorry. That's what I was referring to. So we can use it in the meeting.
So, you want to get some copies?
No, it's not that info, it's your statement then you just read out. That's what you wanted, wasn't it? It's the statement that's just been read out. Yeah.
Right. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of January of this year. Is that a fair reflection of that which went? Councillor Cubitt.
Sorry, so I would like an amendment to the minutes because I think I'm right in saying that I was unhappy that the commercial property investment portfolio has been subsumed into the legacy portfolio when we always required it to be ring-fenced in order to track the value of the underlying capital investment, because it's of grave concern to me and the taxpayers of Basingstoke and Dean. So that's not referred to in my minutes regarding the annual property plan, and I believe I said it then. So can that please be included? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy if that's included. Yeah. Okay, fine. Councillor Basham.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 7, right at the foot of the page, some members felt the purchase of the premium was a good investment deal and that the Smarter Ways of Working project was a huge success. I don't remember anyone talking about anything being a huge success. I may be mistaken, but I mean, if other people disagree, then that's fine.
You said it was?
I said it was a huge success.
So we'll keep that in the minute.
Some rather than one.
Or what?
I've got a little bit of a problem with the accuracy of the minutes throughout, which really relates to the way that we're talked about as a group, as members. And I think that we would benefit from having a little more accuracy around who said what. But I don't know if that's ever been raised before. I'd find it personally helpful, but.
Councillor James.
I think, Chairman, recognising the amount of capacity that democratic services have to do the work, I think we always agreed we wouldn't have a blow-by-blow account of these meetings. But I think Councillor Basham is right. Where there is a division of opinion, I think it's right to record that the committee were not all in one place, or the committee were divided on the issue of. I think that's a fair enough way of recording it. So I don't think it's fair to expect Andy or anyone else to go, Councillor Basham thought this and somebody else thought this, but it should just clearly show either a unanimous agreement or a division of opinion, whichever one it happens to be.
Councillor Cubitt.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just for ease, maybe it'd be a good idea if the way we proceed going forward is in the way we do with other committees, which is at the end of each agenda item, the Vice Chair does a summing up of what the committee has said in the broad brush matters, and then we agree, and then we move on. Maybe we should do it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Great.
If the Chairman agrees in the committee?
Yeah, Sue.
So I think that's generally where there are a number of recommendations that people want to surmise. So if there are recommendations, that's one thing, obviously, in terms of them feeding back to whichever committee or officer. I think making a general note of the conversation is obviously what the minutes are for.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can do that, because a lot of what we do is simply recommending, approving, or whatever. There is no, shall we say, debate. But the points you make about perhaps a little more detail in the minutes could be accommodated. Sebastian.
I would just like to say the minutes are of a high quality, and I know what a difficult job it is doing it, and thank you to whoever does it. Sorry for adding to workload.
Thank you. Notwithstanding that and Councillor Cubitt's request, is the rest of it subject? Is it okay? Yeah. Can you hear me? So, on to item 5, the Internal Audit Progress Report, November, February 23. Over to Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my usual progress report. This shows the work the internal audit team that we've done between November and February, and also includes the current position with the outstanding audit recommendations up to the end of February. Table in paragraph 4.1 of my report shows the 7 completed audit reviews that we've undertaken, together with the level of assurance and the number of recommendations that we made. The summary reports of these reports are shown in appendices 2 through to 8 of my report. Concerning recommendations, paragraphs 4.2 and 4.3 show the current position of the outstanding audit recommendations, and these are detailed in appendix 1 of my report. Just with regards to progress, paragraph 4.5.3, the 2 reports we have in draft at the time of the report, they're now complete, have been issued as final. So that's the only kind of update that I have from what's printed. Other than that, I just request the committee note the report, please.
Questions from the committee? Councillor Tustain.
Thank you, Chair. I've looked through this, and thank you for all the work that's gone into this. And don't think there's much that can be done at this particular point. But one thing that really sprung out to me, I think, is obviously a lot of this is very focused on the finances, which is brilliant. But what didn't jump out at me is the sort of services auditing, and I just wondered if there can you explain how why that might not be there? I presume it's probably not a statutory thing, or if there is any intention of doing it, or if it follows a cycle or something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that one. In terms of the role of internal audit, we look at processes rather than services. So, for example, take the creditors process, well look at that. Obviously, the creditors process does span across various services, but I'm more focused on ensuring that controls are in place in processes, governance arrangements in place for processes, rather than taking a department or like Exchequer service to say, right, what do Exchequer services do? Bang. I'm more interested in the processes within, if that makes sense, hopefully.
Sorry, just to be clear, I'm referring to the idea of sort of quality control process, which can impact and be dealt with on an operational level.
Yep. If we are aware of particular, when we look at key performance indicators, which will be part of any audit that we do, in terms of quality, that's more around the audit sampling that we do. So I'm not aware that anybody's got an ISO standard, for example, within the authority. So we wouldn't look at that.
Councillor Basham, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did have a couple of sort of broad brush comments, really. I think I mentioned last time that you know, we've got three legs to the governance stool, of which internal audit is a key one. I thought this report was generally excellent. Thank you. I think internal audit looks like it's in good shape. I hadn't realised we were putting in place a new ERP system. So whoever's led on that, I know how difficult that is and what a challenge that is. And to read the audit report off the back of that was really reassuring. So I think well done to the whole team that put that ERP system in. I was a little bit concerned about the withdrawal of the system administrator role, which is obviously vital to leveraging the benefits of the ERP system, but I'm sure that's in hand, and or if someone can give me an update, that would be great. I think looking through the appendix, I think it's Appendix 1, the thing that really struck me, looking at the overdue audit actions, was that some of these are, well, many of them are a year and a half a year overdue, but some of them are 2.5 years overdue, and most of the ones that are 2.5 years overdue relate to business continuity. And I know it's not the most glamorous subject, but you know, when it goes wrong, it goes wrong. And so I just wondered if anyone had a comment on that. And I you know, it's obviously it's pushed out. It's not necessarily great news though. And then the other one that really caught my eye was that we had a large number of overdue audit actions, internal audit actions around property. And I know I keep banging on about property, but the other thing that really concerned me about the fact that these were overdue was that part of the reasoning given is that business as usual is getting in the way. Now, there are other ones here around information governance and or other subjects where, and or parking is another great example, where we've got a staffing challenge because someone's off. But business as usual is not a healthy reason for pushing it off, and that implies we've got a resourcing problem in property. And property comes through, again, in the audit report, as you know, it's an area of high value, £300 million of property. We've had challenges with property valuations in the past. And so I guess I'm going to keep banging on about property, and I think we should probably look at boosting resource in property because it's so important to this council, and it's the reason that, you know, we keep we balance the budget really. So that's the area that just concerns me. So that's a very long question ramble.
Sue.
If I can pick up both of those actually. So business continuity, these issues were raised obviously prior to COVID, and therefore business continuity was almost put to one side where we had our emergency planning and our plan in place during the COVID transactions. What's inherently happened is that a number of business continuity and service risk registers have been updated as a result of COVID, and actually, although not noted on each of these, the actual corporate risk register does note that business continuity is actually going to be review and test all the plans during 2023. So I think that one is skewed slightly by the fact that it was kind of business continuity was paused because actually we were doing something very different. But appreciate actually that doesn't say that for you, so we should update the comments around that. In terms of property, so we've had a number of resourcing issues in the past, and we are now nearly at full capacity in property services, which has meant that a lot of the actions on here will now move forward at pace. But again, I will follow up with the head of service as to why that hasn't been updated accordingly.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, Richard.
If I could just add with regards to property services, yes, historically resourcing was an issue. In recent times, in recent months, we now have regular dialogue with the property services team, and I think it's a good example of where now they are nearly fully resourced. There's more opportunity for better communication between us and the service. So we are seeing more regular responses. We have regular meetings now with property. So hence why a couple of years ago, a lot of these would have been blank, where there wouldn't have been a response. But we do now have at least a response. And also going forward, where recommendations aren't even yet overdue, we are getting more communication, and we have seen evidence of progress against the recommendations as well. So that is definitely a positive we've seen in the last few months regarding property services.
Councillor James was next.
Well, I think Councillor Basham's largely made the point. We seem to see the same things, and what concerns me is, I mean, if you look at the fourth one down, where the head of property and assets says property are moving forward with plans to fully utilise TechForge. Training with TechForge is being considered. And then if you look at the 15th of Feb 23, so a month later, property are moving forward with plans to fully utilise TechForge. Training with TechForge is being considered. It just sounds a little bit like not a lot of progress has been made in a month. Now, this is one of those ones that it was 31st of August 22, revised to 30th of September 22. Nothing happened between January and February. I don't know, and I appreciate there's somewhere in here I saw it, the sort of if it's fundamental, you're supposed to do something about it within a month, and if it's significant, 3 months, etc. But it's almost like, actually, if we know that it's completely unrealistic, it's just not going to happen in 3 months, it seems pointless setting a target that we're then going to ignore, because targets only really work. It's a bit like when we have a budget and then we have an amended budget. Well, you know, you can keep amending the budget until you get it right, but then you haven't really achieved anything. So I don't know whether there's got to be a different way of, you know, if we are under-resourced in a certain area, that we know it's going to take 6 months, there's a whole new system, loads of training, etc. It's going to take 9 months to do it. Let's just put that in as a target. Let's be realistic, agree a target, set a target. Now, I don't need to see it in these papers. Clearly, the senior leadership team of the council need to see the baby steps that are going to be taken to achieve that target and measure staff against it, because we get these things and it's like there's no consequences. We just got the same response, cut and pasted from the head of service to say, yeah, we're looking at it. And you're not convinced these targets really mean anything to anybody. But
yeah, we'll take that on board, so thank you for that.
And Councillor Cubitt.
Yeah, Paul, you know what I'm going to say to you. Really good report, and your team are excellent. But I'm afraid the property fixed asset register, how many years has it been on there for now?
I think we've had this discussion on many audit committee, and I think the last committee I came to, which was November, we had the discussion there, and it's noted in the paper, in the minutes, I think, that there was first an identification of an issue, which was a manual process. That was resolved, which is where financial systems coming into place, and obviously we've kept the recommendation there because you need to implement the financial system. And go back to Councillor James's point, you're not going to implement a system in 3 months. So I've taken on board what Councillor James has mentioned there, but as I'd like to reiterate from Richard, we are seeing progress, and the onus is on the relevant head of service to take this forward.
So as a friend, as opposed to, you know, not a friend, that's great. But I think I'm right in saying that since 2009 we've had this commitment.
That's incorrect. They are various evolutions of recommendations which have been to address the issues at the time, be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or however many years we've been talking about property. But they are various evolutions of trying to improve processes. So we've gone from that manual process into more of a system generated process, and that's what we're working towards. And as I've mentioned before, I'm keen to highlight these issues to the committee so you can see that we're bringing those issues to you rather than sweeping under the carpet. So although they are working very hard, and we've talked about the resources, going back to what Richard said, we've now got that dialogue in place, so I'm confident that I would see resolution, and I'll be able to bring that resolution to the committee.
Okay, thank you. And is the system that we're talking about now the same one that Councillor Isaac promised us 10 years ago, or is it a different one?
I don't know what Council Isaac promised us 10 years ago.
Okay, anyway, thank you for the report, but obviously it is a fundamental. Are there any other fundamentals that you think we should be hearing a bit more information from you about, that you have concerns about? Because you're the expert, not us.
I'm an expert from an audit point of view, not from the systems of the audit. Get that straight. I'm comfortable that we do have a proper mechanism in place for following up recommendations, hence the reason we bring the papers to you each time, that we do have a rigorous recommendation process in place. And as we've discussed many a time, if the committee do have concerns about a certain area, they do have the remit to call any head of service to a committee to explain what they're doing with those recommendations. But I'm happy today and comfortable that we've got a good process in place and people are working towards it with us.
Councillor Basham was next.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting that you say about the calling a head of service to the meeting. I had made in my notes further down about the building control aspects. I just obviously Grenfell is still front of mind, and where we have fundamental risk around building control, and I can't remember the exact one on here, but it's to do with the safety of public buildings. I would, if that is not resolved or moved out of fundamental into a lower category by the next meeting, I would like to hear why from the head of service.
And also to add to that, when we get to the next paper, which is around the audit plan for next year, you'll see that we've got building control dangerous structures in the audit plan for next year, which was requested by the committee back in September.
Councillor Putty.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, great report. Really, it is quite legible. The only thing that I need magnifying glass, really, to go through that. But anyway, but the only along the bank reconciliation, where 3 and 5 we got fundamental, but the action and time of audit, you see, when is going to be the responses for the cyber security audit? When are we expecting that to be for the 2023? And also the current and future resources, but how in the past the resources had been really examined during the review of the banking processes. Richard? Sorry, yeah.
So yeah, concerning the bank reconciliation process, that involved adopting processes within the new ERP system. I've reported in previous bank reconciliation audits how what a massive manual process it all is. But we were satisfied that controls were in place, that the cash and the bank were reconciled. But under ERP, with the implementation, resource was drawn away from doing the regular reconciliations they used to do to just getting the process established. That's now established, and they are now working back to get the reconciliations up and running again. So that did have an impact on the work that they were doing this year. So that was the bank rec. So what was the with regards to cyber? Thanks. So the cyber security, there's some recommendations listed on Appendix 1. This week we have had we've agreed the final for this year's cyber security audit. Literally today. So the way in which the nature of cyber risk works, if any of the recommendations were outstanding from last year, they haven't been picked up in this year's audit. If they've been picked up in this year's audit, they'll be reported again. But if not, which I think is the case with these risks highlighted in the appendix, then they will be cleared. So if I was presenting this report next week, those recommendations wouldn't be in there, but there'd be more from this year's cyber security where they pick up more issues. So for this one, we get an external expert come in, and they do the classic penetration testing on your network and highlight the issues that they find. So the old ones have gone. or will be going, but the new ones will be when I report next in July. That report will come to you then. Hopefully by then, though, the issues would have been sorted in the recommendations because they're due for completion, hopefully end of May. we shall see.
Sorry, Chairman, can I come back?
Supplementary?
Yeah. What type of issues you think we're going to, and what's the level of risk, etc., that we're going to face?
With regards to the cybersecurity, I have to admit I couldn't explain some of the technicalities. You're on about FTP protocols and stuff, which is as much as I can explain. But we have we've graded the risk as we always do, fundamental, significant, and some merits attention ones as well. There are some significant issues in there, but the IT manager has provided a response to them. They have got processes in place already to address them. So hopefully by the time we come to July, it'll be the report, but the issues will have been cleared. So fingers crossed.
Councillor Tosdale, I think you had your hand up.
I did, thank you, Chair. Two questions. The parking services is going to be transferred to Hampshire. Are these all going to just disappear off here? Has Hampshire been made aware of these issues, or how will that work? So that's the first question. The second question was, obviously parking services is, although a lot of this ties around on the sort of financial aspects of parking and penalty notices and things. But so, and you mentioned bringing in heads of service, and going back to my previous question around pulling things in the process about how things are managed, because just from a very simple perspective, residents expect a level of service standard, and that obviously is tied up in how that process is applied. And this again, that's that quality question. So how that come out and why we don't do that, or as you did mention, I think to answer another question, can we then bring somebody in here if we wanted to actually request an audit of a particular service area?
So in terms of requesting an audit, you could do that in my next paper, but obviously that would be the consideration for myself and Sewers 151 officer because of the resources I've got available, so we can cover that in the next paper. In terms of informing Hampshire of our recommendations, I haven't done that, and I'm not sure whether the parking manager has. And in terms of the recommendations disappearing when Hampshire take over, I would have to look at these on a one-to-one basis to see which ones are to remain with us and which ones are for Hampshire. So if they are with Hampshire, obviously we would remove them, but if they're still for Basingstoke, they'd remain until they've implemented.
Councillor Katetra.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to ask about information governance. You've said that we're not going to complete that work in March. Are we guaranteed to finish that in May 2023, or is there going to be a delay on that?
Coming back to the point Councillor James probably made earlier on, there probably will be need for extension on those ones. So we'll go back and have a look at them and try and come up with the head of service a sensible approach. Don't like to make recommendations that are like 18 months or a year in advance for completion, but if that's a realistic target, then that's what we will go with, and of course that's one we can actually stick to if we agree that. Yeah, sure.
Yep. Okay.
Wouldn't it be better to under-promise and overachieve? Because over here, I think it's the other way around. You're over-promising and underachieving, and we're changing targets all the time. And I understand you guys are busy and you've got lots of other work to do as well. But I'd rather have it the other way around, where you say, okay, we're going to do this, and then overachieve rather than underachieve and not reach the targets or keep on changing the dates. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, take that one on board. From my point of view, the most important thing is that we don't lose sight of the recommendation. So if you give it a 12-month, 18-month deadline, do you lose it? Where I'm coming from the direction of I'd rather have the date in there, but get the progress statements. So at least I can come to the committee and share with you that progress is being made on a recommendation, rather than leaving it 12 months to find we actually haven't done anything. So that's why we take the approach we do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was a good debate, and I was very pleased with the way you differentiated between what the audit team does, as opposed to the operational providers, often in a very difficult situation and a bit of a cleft stick. So thank you for that. We move on to, we're asked to note that report, which I think we've done and contributed to it. So on to the internal audit plan 23-24. Councillor Kewitt.
Sorry to be a nuisance. Are we going to just do a quick summing up of things that we've said in addition to the noting?
Well, I think I'd rather leave that to the minutes. I think it's rather difficult. There was an awful lot there.
So, for example, a head of service to come in the event that...
We actually minuted that in a previous meeting, that we reserve the right to ask for the service officers to come and present to committee if we feel that necessary. So far we haven't done. Yeah, Councillor Basham.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I did ask to see the head of building control services if that risk on the that significant fundamental risk on the risk register, sorry, on the audit plan here, is not addressed by the time the next meeting comes around.
Okay, that's noted. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. This is the annual plan which we have every year. So this is mostly a repeat from previous years with amendments to reflect anything new. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm actually asking the committee to approve something this time rather than to note it, which is different. There's two pieces to this paper that I'd like you to approve. One is the Internal Audit Charter, which can be found Appendix 1, page 67. There are a couple of minor amendments to the charter from the one that's approved this time last year, and that's primarily changing the date at the top and changing the job title, and you should hopefully see the highlighted change within that document. So there's no other change to that one. And the second part is my audit plan, which can be found on Appendix 2. Decided to take a slightly different approach to the audit plan this year from what we've done previously, and I've incorporated the corporate risk register into it. So each of the corporate risks will be audited. So hopefully that means I can then give the committee the assurances that the relevant controls identified in the register are in place. So fingers crossed for that one. And also, as mentioned in the previous paper, under other key audits, the building control dangerous structures has been added because that was requested at the, I think it's Councillor Basham at the September 22 meeting. So I've got nothing more to add, Chair. So just ask that both documents are approved. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So just it all looks excellent. Just because I'm being stupid, with regards to, say, for example, the contract standing orders and the problems there, and the work identified, and the managers working on it, but there's been problems because there's been vacant posts. And I'm going to touch on this obviously when we get to the corporate risk register, but I'm fully aware that there seems to be vacancies left, right and centre in a lot of services at the moment, which is really impacting on our service provision. So in terms of the commitments that we've made with the previous paper, what does that then mean with regards to our commitment to the annual audit for the same activity when we've got this problem already?
So, for example, just to give a bit of history, the contract standing orders audit is currently being done at the moment for this financial year. So when we get to 31st of July meeting, you'll get the audit outcome with recommendations if there are any. So in terms of what I do here, the core audits, as you can see on page 77 there, that's carried out annually. So whether it's a full assurance 1 year, I'll still do it the following year. Where the other key audits, that is done on a risk assessment, and I've describes how the risk assessment is carried out in, apologies, I'll just get to my paper. And so I would do a risk assessment with my professional judgment on it. The plan was consulted with SLT as well, so they're aware what's there and they were happy with that. And dependent on my risk assessment on those ones, that'll determine whether it's done every year or every 2 years, if that helps.
Councillor Putty.
Thank you, Chairman. On the audit, annual audit plan on Appendix 2, the key audits that we have got at medium risk, the developer's contribution and the seal, the community infrastructure levy, and also the one that we have got building control dangerous structures, as it was highlighted by Paul and O'Neill, Councillor Cubitt. Yeah. Do we really, because the one that I'm concerned about, like the seal, do we present a list, because we as councillors, whether we can see who are who donates to that particular fund and how it is used or where it is going. The developer's contribution, the section 106, we know that it is meant to be for the area that is being developed, to be used for that area's infrastructure and community provisions. And whether it is like at one time it was vied, and I don't like that, since that if there is a developer's contribution for a certain area, that it is going to be vied. So I just want to know about that. And the building control on the dangerous structures, there are lots of developers who have built houses with a lot of cladding, wooded cladding around. And how do we really monitor them? Well,
So in terms of the questions you've just asked, that they are very technical, and I expect the technical officers to be answering those questions. I'm internal audit background, so we will obviously look at the processes in place. For example, the dangerous structures. That was a request that came from the building control manager this year, wasn't it? The head of service. So we'll look at what processes are in place. So, for example, how are members informed of the money's available? How is it spent? Is it spent in line with policy, strategy, etc.? So I can only give you that information today. Those technical questions you probably need to take to the relevant technical officer.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I can help Councillor Putty on, because we've asked, because you're not on that committee at EPH, and we've got a commitment from the Cabinet member, Councillor Ganesh, that he is going to go through with all of us councillors from all parties the SIL and the Section 106 awards in each of our. So that there is a discussion about that, but that's outside of your remit. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other points on this audit panel? Can we approve both the items on this agenda? Okay, approved. Thank you. So it takes us on to item 7, which is the review of the corporate risk register.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, this is the regular format report for the corporate risk register, which comes to you twice a year. Just want to highlight that following the review by SLT that was carried out in February, there's been no changes to any of the risk scores. So it as is from 6 months ago. For information, I've also given you a diagrammatic view of the corporate risk register, which could be found in paragraph 1.3. I wasn't going to add any more to that, just asked for the committee to note the paper.
Sir James.
Yeah, I'm obviously happy to note it. I don't know, the staffing element is one that concerns me, that it seems, certainly I'm currently advertising for vacancies and I can't fill them across the South Central area. It seems to be a massive issue at the moment, and for, you've said it yourself, the technical stuff that we as an authority need, the expertise we need to have, you can't, it's a very small pond to fish in. I'm surprised, given when you look at the previous sort of internal audit results and how staffing is mentioned, resource issues, etc., it's increasingly coming up as a reason why we are behind schedule, behind timescales, and yet staffing still sits in this sort of impacts marginal, likelihood possible. I just wonder what has to happen for it to. Do I have to come in here for a committee meeting and there's just little plates and no staff here before someone goes, yes, a problem now? I don't know. It concerns me more, and it seems to be increasing, but I don't know who decides when it gets upped a bit.
So that'll be the risk owner, which is currently the chief exec. Obviously, I'll take your comments to the next review of the corporate risk register, and we'll have that discussion at SLT. And if we feel the change is required, then obviously change will happen, and I can report that back next time.
Okay, is that duly noted? Oh, Councillor Chastain.
Yeah, quick question. So, based on things like that, so you've got the staffing, for example, when does that risk become an issue?
I would suggest it's an issue because it's a current issue because it's on the corporate risk register. So it's been highlighted by our strategic leadership team that that's a corporate risk that we need to monitor. So I'd say it's an issue now. Absolutely.
Councillor Basham.
I think I completely agree with colleagues all around the table on staffing, and in particular areas that we didn't delve too much into in the internal audit reports because none of it's overdue yet. Richard's only just finished his work, so information governance was one, and some of the cyber stuff that we've talked about as well. It does look like, and I know I mentioned it looked like there was a resource pressure in property services, but it looks like there's a similar, almost higher resource pressure in IT, and obviously that's with the tide, and by that I mean data is multiplying by, is it Moore's law? I'm not sure, but anyway, you know, that area is not going to go away anytime soon, and it's going to get more and more important. So I just wondered if anyone had a perspective on the IT team, and just aligned with that, if I can, Sue, the values piece of work that's going on by Sue Cragg and the pay and benefits review, I should think will be instrumental in helping recruit. And I wondered if anyone had an update on the timelines on those as well, or that probably goes to the HR committee.
Sue.
So in terms of the IT team, we've just finished consultation on the new IT team restructure, with further funding being allocated as part of the approved budget last week, a couple of weeks ago. So that whole resource area has been looked at in terms of what we know and trying to future-proof that team. So there's been a lot of activity around there, and you may or may not be aware that we've also been awarded a £100,000 grant from DLUC in terms of our cybersecurity action plan that we developed with them. So there is quite a lot of activity in that area at the moment about effectively having a service that is more structured to meet the current and future organisation, and we'll pick up a number of these things. In terms of the review of values and the pay and benefits review, an update did go to HR committee. I think that was last Monday, and we are aiming to consult with staff hopefully towards the end of March.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mention it, but if I may, I believe is there a resource pressure in planning as well in particular? Have you got any comment on that one?
So there have been resource issues in planning, but obviously we've taken that under advisement, and a lot of work's gone on around that, and we've managed to attract a number of additional officers in the planning team. But along with a number of other areas in the authority, it does continue to be a challenge in terms of ensuring that actually we retain those people that we recruit, and that's all part of that pay and benefits, review of values, review of benefits.
Right, thank you. Yeah, as I recall at council in last month we approved, I think, 27 extra heads for this budget year. 29, right. That's good. Okay, are we happy to note? Councillor Katecha, I apologise.
No problem, Chair. Thank you very much. Just coming back to the same thing about staffing, have we looked at skilling our staff, and what is the key problem in recruitment? Okay, I know it's a small place to recruit from, but is it regarding to what we're offering salary wise? And then people do come here sometimes and then just leave after a few months or a year because they're getting more money or better packages in the corporate world. Have we looked at different areas? I'm just asking, I don't know.
So the head of HR and OD is currently updating the workforce strategy, and obviously reports that to HR committee. There are a number of issues affecting the recruitment and retention of staff. It's not just one type of issue. And the pay and benefits review is looking at our pay policy and where we benchmark against others. And obviously we keep regular updates in terms of exit interviews, understanding why people leave the organisation, etc. And we've done just recently a staff survey with staff to understand what benefits they actually value. And that all forms part of the pay and benefits review that we're currently doing.
Councillor Cubitt?
Yes, in terms of the corporate risk register, it's really useful to see it, and it's very useful that you're going to be looking at it every year. Just like to, I'm a little surprised that there hasn't been any change from last year, particularly with regard to treasury management, because obviously the finance industry is in a state of flux at the moment due to Ukraine and Russia and the bond market and rising interest rates. And so I just wonder, and Sue maybe could help on this, why she believes that the risk to our bond portfolio is unchanged when clearly the risks in the bond market in general have changed significantly. Thank you.
So obviously this represents, rather than service risk, it represents the overall risk to the organisation in terms of holistically the impact of treasury management in terms of the income that we generate for the running of the services in the organisation. And so we'll be coming on to this later, but if you think, for example, in the last financial year, the current monitoring report suggesting we're going to make an extra £1.46 million because of the way in which obviously interest rates are impacting. There is no indication at the current time that we have a corporate risk around, a reduction in our treasury management income to support services of the council. So whilst individual types of investment may have fluctuations, it doesn't change the overall corporate risk that I perceive for the organisation.
Yeah. Okay, are we happy to note the report?
Can I just ask a secondary question? And in terms of the impacts on capital values, is your position the same on that as well? I mean, it's kind of interesting. There's a debate at large about the Bank of England crystallising their losses on their bond portfolios and whether they need to and whether it's much better to stay to redemption. Similarly, I suppose we have that debate that has to be had internally here.
So whilst we are still in a situation where we don't have to take losses or gains to the bottom line of the revenue account and therefore does not have a direct immediate impact on the organisation or how we run, I don't perceive a change in the overall level of risk. Obviously what we do have to do as obviously part of the treasury management strategy is understand when the best time, if there is a good time to go, in terms of when we might redeem a certain investment and then look to another one. So, we've always monitoring the capital value, we're always monitoring the actual investment itself, and if we have concerns over the performance, we then work with Arlene Close about what's our exit strategy, and obviously reducing that risk, but that's all again within the overall corporate risk.
Okay, that would take us into the next item, but if we're happy to note the corporate risk register, thank you, Paul, thank you, Richard. That was a very good debate, thank you. Okay, so agenda item number 8, which is the Treasury Management Q3 report. So, Adam? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this one. So this report shows the activity from the Council's Treasury Management for the period up to 31st December 22, and the committee are asked to note the paper. just a couple of things I was going to pull out the report. I wasn't going to go through it in detail, but as Sue's already mentioned, current forecast is for income for the year to be 3.34 million, which is 1.46 million higher than forecast at the start of the year, and the forecast average yield is expected to be 2.26% for the year. Obviously, as has been noted, there have been some sort of declines still on fund values, although as Sue's mentioned, DLUC have actually confirmed in recent weeks that the continued IFRS 9 statutory override will continue for at least another 2 years. That requires us not to recognise those losses until they're actually crystallised, so they don't have a direct impact on the revenue of the council. So that was all I was going to go through, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any comments or questions? Councillor Basham.
Just on the DHLUC guidance around, I mean, recognising or not recognising losses on portfolios is it's one of those areas that goes backwards and forwards in the accounting standards, depending on where the prevailing winds are over long cycles. It's historically an area that I've worked in a business where it got that business into challenges. I wondered if it'd be possible to just spend a bit of time with you to just talk through how it works at this council and just understand it a bit more, really, rather than rake over it here.
Yeah, of course, more than happy to do that, and can arrange for other officers to be involved in that discussion as well. And that's open to all committee members if you wish.
Okay, there's not a lot different to what we discussed at the last meeting. So as this is just an update report, are we happy to note this report? Noted. Okay. Now on to agenda item 9, the Housing Benefit Subsidy Certification Report for the year ended 31st of March 22. When I read this report, I at first thought, good Lord, earned income applied 19,000, and then I suddenly realised it was actually £19.50. So I think we have to congratulate the team, because when you look at these figures, I mean, there really are the sum of diddly squat in a huge amount of money that's being processed. So please pass on our congratulations to the team. Oh, yeah, I'm just a pensioner. I just came in out of the cold. Okay. On this report, it's recommended that the committee notes the letter from KPMG relating to the certification of the housing benefit subsidy claim for the year ended 31st of March 2022. Are we happy to make that recommendation? Right. Are you happy that time, Councillor James? Right. Great. So, we then go on to item number 10, which is the one that I introduced at the very beginning, which is the statement of accounts for the year ended 31st of March 22. I did, after the last couple of meetings, by the way, read through the Constitution, which was a very salutary exercise, just to check some of the things that we do and don't do, etc. Because I remember my predecessor often commented that this committee gets the annual statement of accounts, but of course all the budget and all the stuff, a lot of that goes into it, goes through scrutiny. But the flavour of the committee is very much regulatory, audit, risk, corruption, etc., etc. So in many ways, in looking at this report, we're looking to make sure that we're comfortable with the report, the materiality issues such as a fair reflection, etc., rather than going into a financial audit of the figures that's in the thing. So having said that, I'll over to you, sir.
I'll do a very brief introduction, but Adam's going to take you through the report. So there has been a substantial amount of work between the last audit and the current audit, information that's being presented. I took the decision, so apologies if its members aren't happy, that instead of republishing again the full set of accounts, we would just note in the report those things that had changed, to save you actually having to read back through the entire set of reports again. But obviously the actual report does link the previous version of the accounts that were circulated. Although I'm going to let Adam go through the key things, I think the thing to note is that we're at a very close conclusion of the audit of the accounts. The auditors are still intending that they will give an unqualified opinion and a VFM opinion, and therefore, again, the recommendation to committee in the event that the EY team are now effectively going through their own files and finally signing off and getting partner sign off of the accounts, we have the option of either reconvening another meeting just to literally sign off the accounts because there's no expected additional major issues, or again, as we did last year, seek the authority to the chair in consultation with myself to sign off the accounts when they come through. But obviously I'll let Adam take you through the main areas that have changed since the last meeting. And Appendix 1 is an update, literally the last day or so, in terms of where EY have got to in comparison to the previous report they gave you. So I'll give you...
Thanks. So I wasn't going to go through in great detail, obviously you have to take questions, but just to highlight the two changes. One relates to investment property disposal gain. It looks like a big number. Effectively, it was a disagreement in accounting treatment. We've amended following discussions with EY, and the other one is purely a disclosure on leases going forward in the future. It doesn't have any impact on the primary statements, so the balance sheet's not impacted by that one, or the income and expenditure statement. And as Sue's already said, we are very close, I think, with EY. We've provided everything they've requested to date, and they are doing their reviews. So we expect this to be concluded in the next couple of weeks, and don't expect any sort of material changes to the primary statements.
Comments? Councillor Cubitt.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we've only got this evening. I hadn't seen this paper before, so I haven't been able to go through it in great detail. But on this section 4, which investment property does it relate to?
So this relates to a site on Vibles that St Modwin took over, and we retained a portion of the site, and they constructed a building on that site, which we've now leasing out at just under sort of more than we were getting for the ground rent. So that's what that relates to.
Councillor Basham.
Thank you for the update paper. I also haven't had a chance to go through it in detail, and I'm conscious that it wasn't posted out because it was so late and we were expected to read it on the internet, and I apologise, I haven't had time to read it on the internet. I think I don't know what to say and how to say this without at the last meeting I raised that I was grossly uncomfortable with, and I thought it would be I think it would be a gross abdication of the responsibility of this committee to pass through. I'm concerned, and to pass through, basically abdicating this committee's responsibility for waiting for the audit opinion before we approve the accounts are signed off. And I just think to abdicate that responsibility when we were told at the last meeting you should sign them off because there's nothing material you have to find, and then lo and behold we're looking at something that's material that's been found. And you know, I think the phrase was Ernst & Young are still intending to issue a clean audit opinion, an unqualified audit opinion, which is great, right? And it probably will happen, and it's 99% likely it will happen, and so on. But the word intending in there, I'm a bit gobsmacked that this paper has come to this committee. I really am. And last time round, colleagues on this side of the table voted against delegating this authority, and I'll be voting against doing it again.
So yeah.
So it is common practice for when the audit is nearing completion for it to be delegated. However, obviously I note the members' concern, and obviously, as we've said, we can convene another meeting in order to sign these off. What I would just highlight is that the two issues in here that are now resolved with the changes were previously highlighted in the previous audit, so they're not new issues. It's just that we've now decided on a resolution to those issues, which of course don't affect the bottom line of the accounts, but obviously I think it's fair to say that on both these issues there was quite a lot of debate between the council and the auditors in terms of a difference of opinion on how they should be treated and coming to a resolution. But obviously there are accounting treatments as opposed to material misstatements within the actual accounts. But I accept your view, and if the committee wishes to, we can reconvene another meeting.
We're taking Councillor Basham's point that the committee made the decision at the last meeting. Yeah, Councillor James?
Yeah, same as the last meeting. Consequences. I recognise Purdah is fast approaching for those of us playing elections, but I don't know whether you have an ordinary accounts meeting or are we going to be talking before nominations?
So having checked with the monitoring officer, because this is actually, it's not a political sign-off, it's a sign-off of the Audit and Accounts Committee, we can actually hold the meeting during the pre-election period. And to be fair, that we want to be able to hold the meeting once the accounts have been signed off, if that's what the committee chooses to do.
So effectively, you'd have the accounts approved by Ernst & Young, you'd send them out to us, we'd have 5 days to digest and read. We could potentially end up coming in here for a matter of minutes if everyone's read and happy with what they've read. So it's not really any great problem then doing, as Councillor Basham suggests, just wait till we've got the Tipex dry, the I's dotted, the T's crossed and whatever else. I don't know what it is, I'm too young, but...
Councillor Cubitt.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert, and I never profess to. I ask questions, and I understand Adam saying, you know, actually it's all fine. But then when I look at it, it says that it reduces our unusable reserves by 4.6 million. It reduces our net assets by 4.6 million. It reduces our surplus on provision of services by 4.6 million. It reduces our proceeds from disposable long-term assets of 4.6 million. And it reduces our gain on disposable investment property of 4.6 million, which resulted in an overall reduced gain on investment property of 4.6 million. So, as a non-expert, that doesn't seem to me to be something that's not material or important or could be conceived to be a misstatement. That sounds to me to be a huge misstatement. Where am I getting it wrong?
So I can go into the niceties of the accounting standards, but I'm not sure we want to be here for the whole evening, but we can do. No, I'm an accountant, I have to say so. Serious questions there. With this transaction, we got a building for free. So there was as part of the wider deal, I should say. And so the way we'd previously recognised it was, yes, there was a gain of 4.6 million, but there was also expenditure of 4.6 million, so a net zero, effectively, which has been stripped out here. The relating to the reserve, rather than it being in the reserve, it is now shown as a liability on our balance sheet of 4.6 million that will now be released over 150 years, the life of the lease, at £30,000 a year, give or take. A few pounds here. That is in essence what has happened, but ultimately we have still got the assets that we were acquired as part of the deal. We are still getting the rental income for that. They are purely elements that go through on the income and expenditure statement that are then reversed out due to various local government accounting under their previous treatment, are now just shown slightly differently under a different accounting standard that EY have determined is more appropriate. For the users of the accounts, I think that's actually more confusing, but that was where we got to, and actually as a sensible place to get this audit finished and done, recognising that we are now approaching the end of this financial year and about to start the next one, it was where it got to. But ultimately, in terms of assets of the council and what's actually delivered, the deal stays the same. It's still a good benefit to the council.
Right, just following on from that, and is the question that I ask regularly when we do transactions, is there's never any other bidders on the table. So there was only Muse, there was only New River, there was only, there's one other example I can't think of at the moment. Anyway, there was only Muse and there was only New River. There was only one Village Hotel. Yeah, Village Hotel was the only bidder for the hotel. So this land that we sold to St Modwyn, were there other bidders? Or did we think that this was a deal which was going to give us 4.6 million? So I know this is not relevant to the discussion now, per se, but it is very relevant to the runnings of the council. Was St Modwyn the only bidder on the table? Because we lost a lot of money to St Modwyn at the top of town about 10 years ago. And we vowed never to do business with St Modwyn back then, because we took a huge hit at, in the Malls. So were they the only bidder?
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah, I think we should take this outside the meeting, because I don't think we're prepared for those in this particular agenda item. I mean, I put it to the rest of the committee. Are you happy to have another meeting when this has been finalised to then approve the accounts?
Yes,
I don't know when that would be. Would it be April?
It would be April, yeah.
Councillor Tusto.
I'm going to ask a simple question because I'm a simple person. And can you just explain exactly what this means? I think I've got the gist of it. And this is basically money that's moved about from a capital thing, and it's created this sort of income on different, balances and accounts and all the rest of it. But can you just put it into layperson terms of just sort of summarise it?
I will try. As I say, it's a very dry subject, I must admit, and I've lost the will to live over the last few weeks reading capital gains tax manuals and all sorts of trying to get my head around this as well. So I appreciate it's not simple. Ultimately, the way that we presented it in the accounts before was that we got a 4.6 million receipt in, and we spent that 4.6 million on getting the building. That was how we did it, and so we recognised it in our capital expenditure. And that EY's view is that actually it was a premium on issuing the new lease as part of that. So and it was in return for that. So what has been done instead is, in that sense, you then recognise the premium, i.e. the amount you got in, which no cash, but in this case a building, over the life of the lease, which is 150 years. So you then recognise the liability, because theoretically we could have to pay that back over the 150 years as a liability on the balance sheet, and then each year it will be recognised as investment property income, albeit not cash, just on notional basis, because it's under accruals accounting. That's effectively how this would be structured. Does that help? Hopefully.
Not a lot, but so basic.
To keep it simple, I think let's delve in right, into the detail. But I think from the point of view of this agenda item, it's a very simple question. Are we going to reconvene another meeting to approve the accounts, assuming they're in a state to be approved? And in the meantime, if anyone wants to seek additional information on some of the details, like you, I tried to understand it and then thought, well, it is accounting stuff, and a lot of it I don't understand either. But there we are. It's pretty heavy stuff.
That's why we need 5 days notice. So don't call us in, so we just publish. Like I say, to read it, to Google it, and did everything else.
Right. Okay, so we'll reconvene at a point yet to be agreed. Okay. Thank you. So that completes that item, which leaves the last item on the agenda, which is simply the, well, it won't be the next meeting, because the next meeting will be the specific one for the statement of accounts. So this is the 31st of July meeting, and that is the is the agenda as per normal. Sue?
Plus potentially calling in the building control head of service, dependent on the recommendations update, as requested earlier.
Any progress on the review of the effectiveness of this committee, and any thoughts on that and how that might fit into this work programme?
If I could end this meeting, and then we could take up those things. There's a couple of points that I wanted to mention, which aren't agenda items. Sorry, Kelsey.
Sorry, I thought it was going to be part of the work programme, so I don't quite understand why it needs to be done outside of the meeting. It's not public.
Yep. Okay.
So the team have gone away to start looking at what options there are in terms of reviewing the effectiveness of the committee. The NAO have issued a checklist that is almost a self-assessment type questionnaire. I've also had a discussion with the chief executive in terms of what the ask is and the monitoring officer, and so we want to have a conversation with the committee in terms of what does that self-assessment questionnaire, what does that bring in terms of value, and then to agree the next steps and actions from that point forward. So we should be able to bring something back to the July meeting.
Following on from that, further to the last meeting, where Adam put forward a proposal to have external advisor and requested that I, as the chair, and 2 other members should join in terms of the interview process. The only person that's come forward is Councillor Basham, and I'm happy, if that be the case, to carry on with Adam, just as it were, the 3 of us for the interview panel. Is everyone happy with that? Great, thank you.
Thank you. That's great news.
Councillor Cubitt?
Yes, so we had the debate as a group before to also that some of us identified a need for an external advisor who had expertise in property. And I think today's experience demonstrates, and I think each time we have an audit meeting, it is abundantly clear to me that we do need an independent property expert as well as an independent treasury expert. I don't know whether the committee would like to reconsider what we decided then and where we think we are now in terms of making us the most effective that we can be for the tax-paying residents of this committee. But I can sense there's some unanimity here. Should we take it to a vote, Mr. Chairman? Do we wish for there also to be an independent property expert awarded to this committee?
Sorry.
Obviously there's a significant cost to having an independent property expert, and obviously as the council we've gone through the tender process for that purpose, and obviously JLL are our property advisors. I'm sure they would be happy to attend any meetings if there are specific questions in terms of that activity, but I would just sort of put that to the committee that there will be a budgetary requirement that will need to be considered alongside that. So it would be a request, I assume, to Cabinet.
So if my memory serves me right, the additional cost was £2,000. And if my memory also serves me right, we as auditors are independent. Therefore, listening to what JLL advises us, they have, they're not independent because they are our agent, as it were. So we need an oversight, an expert, and I don't think for £2,000 a year, that is an excess demand on the public purse. I think it would be actually extremely sensible and prudent of us to have that spend on this committee, especially in view of, say, for example, this accounting unfortunate incident and the references to many down that have also have not been addressed and resolved with our external auditors. And we are about to enter into some extremely complex property transactions, and we've just had extremely significant up valuations on our property portfolio. £2,000, in my opinion, is money well spent. I don't know what other members think.
I think at the last, Adam, we've just going for one person as a starter. Wasn't that the view of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, my point is that the SIPFA recommendations were that we should have two, and we for some reason decided just one. But I'm thinking that if the committee have mood changed in view of the market, in view of Croydon, in view of all these councils that are losing hand over fist money, they're going bankrupt because they haven't borrowed to invest. Whereas we're a little bit more opaque because we haven't borrowed, so therefore we cannot be as exigent in terms of our outputs, and that's why it's even more important that we have an independent expert on this panel that knows the market better than any of us sitting here.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, Chair, I was one of the sceptics last time because I happened to be reading that Slough Council have long had 2 independent members on their Audit and Accounts Committee, and it's worked really well for them. But they're now going to 4 to try and resolve the issue. So I was a sceptic. To be honest, I think finding experts wanting to come and sit and enjoy this 6 times a year, we may not get the number of applicants that we think. So I don't think there's any harm in exploring. Let's put it out there. Let's interview some people. And if we come back and we find that there are 2 people that would add a really good value to this committee, then I think we bring them in. If we only find one, we only find one. But I think we're in that situation where we're more likely to struggle to find the people. I'd hate to send a talented person away. So I think we are obviously going for 1, that's agreed. But if there were 2, and if we open it up to property as well, if there were 2, and today's issue around property is actually around accounting rather than the actual property investment itself, that's not in question. What's in question is how you account for the 4.6 million that's roamed around all over the place. So it's a treasury issue, an accountant's issue. So I think we would go for we're open-minded to the 2. Let's go out and recruit and see what turns up, because you might not find anybody, but yeah, we might find talent.
What is the budget process on that? Can we do that, or are we outside of our authority?
No, so if you go out to advert and we're able to find 2 independent members, that's absolutely fine. You're just going through the same process. You're just identifying more than one as a result of that process. I think, has the advert gone out? No, so we can amend the advert to say, to add that in.
Can I just add to that? It's very important. Can we see the advert? Because I've had a lot of experience now in the last 15 years. What I don't want to see is explicitly stating that they have to have public sector expertise in commercial real estate. I want external independent advisor that's not a public sector expert. I would like someone who is an expert.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, because we look at property from the point of view of property investment and treasury management, i.e. making money out of it. And we've seen already that tonight the complexities of some of the stuff that is involved in local authority accounting. So an expert in properties, say like leisure parks or that type of development, might not have any knowledge of the type of accounting issue that this committee has to address. So I don't have an answer. We can look, but I think there has to be that local authority expertise. Councillor Basham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think you make a really good point. I think Councillor James also makes a really good point. And I think, if we're on that panel together, then I think we can work that out and try and find the right person. And I don't think we bring the wrong person into this committee. But I think we might. I think Councillor James might be right about recruitment, and I think we could find some public spirited borderline retired person who's not really in it for the money. I think that's the market we're probably in, but I think it would add value to this committee.
Okay. Everyone happy? Yep. Okay, so that all emanated from the work programme. So we've got the calling of the effectiveness as a possible thing to add into the next agenda. Yep. Are you okay with that? So in which case I declare the meeting closed. Thank you all. That was a very good meeting. Thank you.